Hello everyone and welcome to the Bandit's Den. Today's topic is something that hasn't been on my table for a while, but it recently popped back up, and so I thought I would address it now. This topic, a lot of non-vegans and anti-vegans like to use these facts as an excuse to go out and cause as much harm as possible to animals through their lifestyle, but also to try to point out some sort of moral and ethical hypocrisy of vegans in order to feel better about not being vegan themselves. So let's get into it. It's a well-known fact that a lot of electronics like LCD screens contain animal products or use animal products in the manufacturing process. Smartphones as well, some of them do contain animal products. Glues in general you can safely bet they contain animal products, and so that rules out just about anything in modern day that vegans can use, especially in the information age, which would render me incapable of functioning in a modern non-vegan society. And so thankfully we vegans don't subscribe to an anti-vegan perspective of what veganism should be. We don't believe that we should move out into the middle of the forest and just live in grass huts and eat dirt for subsistence, and deny ourselves living in the modern day and communicating with others about veganism. Fortunately for us, and unfortunately for anti-vegans and non-vegans, we adhere to a definition that's been agreed upon by consensus amongst vegans. You can find that definition at vegansociety.com. And the definition is, veganism is a philosophy and way of living which seeks to exclude, as far as possible and practicable, that's an important part, all forms of exploitation of and cruelty to animals for food, clothing, or any other purpose, and by extension promotes the development and use of animal-free alternatives for the benefit of animals. And so, when something is necessary for me to use or have, and there are no vegan alternatives, then I suppose I have to make the only choice possible, and that is to continue existing as a normal person in a non-vegan world. Unfortunately for us vegans, but fortunately for anti-vegans, we don't live in a vegan world. And people do use animal products in the manufacturing process of a lot of this stuff without even thinking about it, and a lot of times without even having to disclose it, because I'm not going to eat my cell phone. So the FDA doesn't require them to list all ingredients on packages, right? But fortunately for anti-vegans, this allows them to believe that we are being hypocritical by attempting to function as normal people in a non-vegan society while still trying to reduce as much as possible, as much as is practicable, our cause of exploitation and suffering of animals. So that just about covers it. You know, it's kind of interesting and silly to me that people come to me with this argument when their meals have obvious victims involved in them. You know, these people are not even trying to reduce their harm against animals as much as possible. You know, they haven't even begun to try because they're lazy fucks and they don't want to. The only research they're willing to do is try to point out that I'm a bad person or I'm a hypocrite, and so it's best for them to go out and cause as much suffering to animals as possible in order to avoid being hypocrites. However, if any of these people have a pet, then that makes them a hypocrite automatically, because you're favoring one animal over another when there's no real definable difference between them. There is no real definable difference between a dog and a pig. Physical appearance, sure. But discrimination against others based on physical appearance has been a common thing in history and has at least among the human race, has been determined to be an unethical way to treat others. And so, why should it be any different among animals? I have to admit, my cell phone may very well possibly have a very thin layer of animal lipids in between two of the screens. It's an extremely small amount. A fraction of a percent of an animal went into that. And I've been using it for like 3 years now. And so it's not really as big of a deal as the quarter of a chicken that's on your plate, or the fermented bovine lactations that are on your plate that a baby was literally killed for. Not only can I not avoid having a smartphone, what these people want vegans to do is to subscribe to their definition of veganism, as if there's some sort of moral giant and can put forward what it means to be a moral person when they're out there causing as much harm as possible to animals. They like to think that they could get us to subscribe to their definition when they don't even attempt to even come close to adhering to it themselves. And thereby adhering to their definition, we would have to move out of modern society and never talk to anybody again that lives in the information age, and pretty much either become homeless or live off-grid and potentially die, because it's much more difficult to control your environment when you're living off-grid, completely disconnected from the rest of society. It becomes a survival situation. And either in a survival situation or being homeless, you're extremely likely to end up having to consume animal products in order to survive. And that's especially in your food, right? In a survival situation, I would, if I could, end up killing an animal in order to avoid starving to death. That's the only way where I feel, other than being homeless because of something happening in my life, right? And ending up having to eat at soup kitchens that were, most of the food has animal products in it, right? There are a few situations where I would be excused for consuming animal product foods in order to survive, right? But I don't need to right now. However, I do need a cell phone in order to clock in and out of work on various apps that most employers, in my industry anyways, require you to be able to use. Everybody in my trade has a smartphone because that's how you clock in and out of work. And not only that, but that's how you can communicate with your employer as well. My computer has, at the very least, served a necessity. Not only did I buy these screens long before I went vegan anyways, but at the very least, the first thing that comes to my mind is it enabled me to purchase my home. I couldn't have purchased my home without having a computer, because a lot of those documents I had to sign were electronic. And so it becomes a necessity. I can't just go Amish. Maybe the people that you should be attacking for using electricity and electronics more so are the Amish, because they don't believe in that. But you see, if people like these anti-vegans that spend all of their time trying to find faults in vegans instead of spending time trying to develop a more ethical way of living for themselves, they're just looking around for faults in vegans in order to feel better about the terrible choices they make themselves. If they instead went vegan and tried to become moral and ethical people themselves, then the world would slowly start shifting toward being vegan, and we wouldn't have to worry about. We would start not having to worry about whether this contains animal products or not, because if people actually gave a shit about it, then there would be vegan options. And eventually the vegan options would take over, and there would be no point in exploiting animals for these products. Because we would have options, right? And they would be the preferred options because they would be the morally and ethically superior options, right? Unfortunately, we don't have those options today. Unfortunately, at least in my country, vegans only make up 1% of the population. I can only hope that it'll grow and grow to the point where maybe we will have vegan option cell phones. Maybe we will have explicitly vegan cell phones, explicitly vegan computer monitors. And it'll take a long time, but it'd be nice to have an explicitly vegan power provider, electricity provider, right, that I could switch to. But unfortunately for me, that is not an option. Unfortunately for me, I live in a non-vegan world, and in order to function as a normal person, there are some things that I do have to use. Kitchen cookware, kitchen appliances is another thing they brought up. It's necessary for me to have food, and so, that's the thing, is people would just like if vegans starved to death, or if we disappeared from modern society and stopped using things like YouTube and computers and cell phones and social platforms to spread our ideology, so that they can go back to living the life they always have and still do, but without as much guilt, because there would be no vegans like myself trying to live their lives in it as morally ethical of a way as possible, right? We would stop making them look bad, and that would make them happy. So this argument is mostly just an attempt to try to get vegans to disappear, essentially. Like, no, you can't use YouTube and still be vegan. No, you can't text message people and still be vegan. No, you can't communicate with the outside world and still call yourself a vegan. I'm sorry, honey, but that's not how it works. It would be nice for you, probably, if that's how it worked, and it'd be terrible for the animals because veganism wouldn't spread as fast as it is. But fortunately for the animals, I am still able to speak up for them because they don't have a voice for themselves. And so why don't you start worrying about what the fuck is on your plate? And why don't you look at the person in the mirror about how unethical they are before going and trying to find faults in people who are morally superior to you? Why don't you try more to be more like me? And then maybe you can see what it's like to be a good person, or at least try to be. I can't claim I'm completely a good person. I get mad at people sometimes, and maybe I say things that I shouldn't have. Like, you're a fat bitch. Or maybe I was totally justified in saying that. But the point is, I'm still morally and ethically superior to you in the realm of how I choose to interact with animals, the products that I choose to buy. And so I highly recommend that you attempt to be more like me instead of trying to find faults in my ideology in order to make yourself feel better about being a selfish cunt. So, you guys enjoy your day. And peace out for real. Go vegan. It is the morally and ethically superior choice in life. And you can live just as healthy of a lifestyle. And I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace out. Later.